And the area where my mother and father grew up in northwest Portland was called Slabtown. That's where the name Slabtown, and you'll hear that in the family. That name's, where were you born? I was born in Slabtown.
Well, the Grandma Harold says.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
she was born in Slabtown, and I was born in
So
Slabtown.
she's born on a corner.
That's right. And she was born right down in Burnside, you know, I mean, in where Skid Row is now, that's where they lived. That was they had homes all through there. Now there's big buildings and whatnot there. But we had a great time in that house, and it was wonderful when you look back on what he did. And every time he turned around, he got it, and there was no basement. It was built right on the dirt, that house was. And over the years, he left the wood outside, and every year, that wood, that 8 cords of wood, that's the first thing he got in the spring. He bought that wood. That wood had to be there in the spring, because it dried all summer. And by the time August came, he had it cut. A sawmill, a man with a old saw came by on the back end of a truck. It was a steam saw, and it would go. It was really wonderful, you know. I could hear that saw still going, you know what I mean. It was a steam saw at one time, and then the guy got real big and got a car and motor, and they had a motor on it, and it was run by a motor. It was a buzz saw, you know, big, really a revolving saw, you know. And he'd take that wood, he'd take it off the pile, run it through there, cut it, and he cut that into, he'd cut it once, twice, 3 times. So you'd have 4 foot lengths of wood, right? Out of a 4 feet length.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just just right for the fire in the kitchen stove, where, you know, where my mother cooked on a wood stove in the kitchen. So that wood was cut, and that wood had to be put somewhere, and we were in the house not too long when he got enough money. He would always do a little something to the house. There was always some plaster put on the wall, and then there was something done for the bathroom, and et cetera. You know, and the house that you see today was not the house that we lived in. In other words,
I always thought it was. I always thought that was
refinished. You know,
Yeah.
it was completely built as we grew up in our younger years, and so we had a life of really something. You know, that we saw something grow. So we saw things born, and we watched them die. That's how interesting it is, you know. And as you look back on it. So my dad and his wood pile, it was a very sacred thing, the wood was. And I wished your dad could have witnessed some of it, because it was, he came after that time, you see, when we had an oil furnace and so on and so forth. And there was a little bit of wood there.
We always had wood in the, when I was a little kid, Grandpa Harold always had wood in the basement for something.
Yeah, well, he had wood.
Blocks for something, I don't know.
Somewhere along the line, he changed it from wood, because it got so high, to oil. Now, what year that is, I don't know. Maybe the oil burner was put in when your dad was little, but that's how I remember it. Now, I don't know. I left home, your dad was 3 years old when I left home, or 2 years old, something like that. So I can't remember all those details, but I remember when we dug the basement. We all lived in the house, and he started digging, and he'd get the dirt out. We'd fill a bucket up with the dirt he'd shovel out from underneath the house, and then he'd start digging the hole for himself. He kept digging and digging and throwing the dirt out.
Underneath the house?
Away. Yes. And that's how he dug the basement.
Must have taken forever.
Well, it was a damn long dig, I'll tell you, boy. I'll tell you, it probably took a couple of years, you know, of digging, just off and on. And then he got enough area in there, and then he had a guy come and put a foundation under the house, you see, and then cement walls and the basement. That's why it was such a low basement. Remember, you'd go down, when you go down, you hit your head on the top of the thing here. And that old wood lift was was the very important instrument, you know, because we threw the wood that was cut, we wheeled it up those steps on a plank, wheeled it to the first window and threw it in there, and then he'd be down there piling it. And in latter years, we all helped. Everybody had to help. But then the girls, you know, were going to school and they didn't get in on it, and somebody else didn't get in on it, and so on and so forth. But he always had that wood was, well, I can see why now. I mean, but at the time we thought, my God, a guy'd go nuts about that wood, you know. It had to be done, everything had to be done just so. I remember one time, I don't know how old I was, but he always said, "Now be sure that I'm clear here, you know, before you throw any wood in." Well, I didn't ask one time. I threw the wood in, skinned his head. He said, went over and took a big bunch of hide off his head. And he was up there, man, every blue smoke word in the world. He was cussing and swearing. Goddamn dummy. Oh, the poor guy.